Bonsoir, bonsoir. Merci à tous et chacun d'être ici aujourd'hui avec nous pour ce webinaire Ends of Sudan.
Everyone that join us
Le
tonight.
but de ce webinaire, c'est vraiment d'éclaircir
For this
la guerre qui se déroule en ce moment au Soudan.
the war
On
that's
entend
going
souvent dire que ce conflit est complexe, obscur et finalement cela entraîne un manque d'intérêt de la part de beaucoup de personnes. Donc nous espérons vraiment que vous allez repartir aujourd'hui avec
living
des
this
idées plus
webinar,
claires
we will have
sur ce
more
drame qui se déroule
ideas about
actuellement
what's
au
going
Soudan.
on in Sudan.
Également, avant de commencer, j'aimerais vous demander si
Also,
cela est
before
possible
that, I
d'éteindre
want
vos
to
vidéos.
ask if
La raison est
possible,
que
you can off your camera.
vous offrons ce webinaire depuis l'Afrique
The
et
reason
ici
is that
l'Internet
we
est très
offering this
instable.
webinar from
Lorsque les
Africa
vidéos
and
sont
yet
éteintes,
the internet is
il y a
not.
moins de risques de
And
déconnexion
when
pour
the
nous.
video are off,
C'est un petit peu moins
we have
plaisant, mais
more
cela évite
less
trop de
issue of
déconnexion.
internet
Merci
problem.
beaucoup. Si
Thank you for
toutefois nous
understanding.
venions à être déconnectés,
And if,
s'il vous plaît,
however,
donnez-nous juste
we
quelques minutes et nous serons en
have
mesure
internet
de
issue, give
revenir
us
et
some
de
minutes
continuer
to
le
come
webinaire.
back and continue with this webinar.
Donc maintenant, sans plus tarder, nous allons commencer
Now we will
et
start
nous
this
allons écouter Wardougou
and
Kelly Sakin.
we will
Il est
hear
membre
from
du chapitre
World,
sénégalais de World Beyond War.
who
Et
is
surtout,
member
il est
of
juriste en droit public et
WorldBeyondWar.org
politiste spécialisé sur les questions de
and
paix et
is
de
a legal
sécurité
jurist
à
from
l'université Gaston
Senegal,
Berger de Saint-Louis du Sénégal.
from the University of Gaston Berger from Senegal, from Saint-Louis from Senegal.
Merci beaucoup encore une fois de plus. Donc, c'est un plaisir de nous retrouver.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be in this webinar to speak about the war which is forgotten from the world.
De la 79e Assemblée générale des Nations Unies.
There is a very recent debate at the UN, and there is a lot of intervention, but they don't really focus on the Sudan. Many presidents from many countries are talking about it, but they don't really focus on it. This is just talking. Nothing is really done. So Sudan is a vast, very vast country in Africa. The language French and English, and the main religion is Islam. There have been a lot of conflict and crisis, but we're not going to focus on that today. Even the South Sudan has been parted from the country. We are going to talk today about the current war. We are going to put it into context. So the dictator Omar el-Bashir was put down after he left after a coup. Between 2019 and 2021, there were like a council, and there were military and civilian. During that period of time, there were already some issues between military and civilian. And so there were a second coup by the military. And now the government is ruled only by militaries. In 2023, after the beginning of the war, there were a blurred period. They disagreed. The government wanted to include these troops into the government in order to control all the military, but they disagreed on that, and this is why the war started.
Donc, on peut dire qu'en gros, la cause directe du conflit, c'est l'absence donc de consensus sur la mise en place de la réforme de l'armée.
So to put it in a nutshell, the war started because they were not able to work together for ruling the country.
Et d'un autre côté, nous avons les forces de soutien rapide, ce qu'on appelle les RSF, commandées par le général
So there
Mohamed
is the Rapid Support Force, which is commanded by General Mohamed Hamdan Dagalo, and the Sudanese Armed Force, headed by General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan. There is also some other groups, some armed groups, which are mostly at the edge of the country and get involved in the war as well.
Alors, à côté de ces partis qui sont endogènes, c'est-à-dire des partis soudanaises,
but this is what is happening within the country. But there is also people from outside who takes part in this war. There is different powers, supporting each part of the conflict. And so Sudan has become a geopolitical place.
Notamment la recherche de l'influence, n'est-ce pas, sur les dynamiques internes du pays pour protéger un certain nombre d'intérêts.
These outside countries
se trouvent, n'est-ce pas, dans une position géostratégique pertinente sur la corne de l'Afrique, avec
each of these outside parties try to get control. And of course, the natural resources from Sudan, which are numerous, are a reason why these outside players are interested in Sudan. So we're talking here about Egypt, United Arab Emirates, Russia, Ukraine, Iran, Israel.
Quelles sont les conséquences qui découlent immédiatement de ces conflits-là en réalité? Et ces conséquences peuvent être subdivisées en plusieurs parties. Nous avons d'abord des conséquences socio-humanitaires. Alors,
some terrible consequences, mostly on human beings. Since April 2023, there have been 20,000 people who died.
Comme on appelle non officiel, parlerait des centaines de milliers de personnes qui sont mortes.
But of course, this is the official figures, but the unofficial figures says that there is way more than that.
Plus de 10 millions de personnes qui sont forcées, n'est-ce pas, à être déplacées.
There is people who die, but there is also people who are displaced, and these figures are huge. And these people are going to Chad, for instance. And so it makes Sudan the biggest crisis in the world.
Ça, c'est prévient Catherine Russell, directrice générale de l'UNICEF, au terme d'une visite à
Children, of course, are the first victims of this war. There is also the lack of food.
70% des ménages ruraux n'ont pas cultivé de terre en 2023. Et probablement
70% of people who used to have who live from crops, they can't do that anymore. So starvation is spreading very fast around Sudan.
Les nouvelles données de l'IPC qui révèlent en réalité en 2024 que plus de 750 000 personnes sont confrontées à des niveaux catastrophiques d'insécurité alimentaire.
In 2024, there is 750,000 people who are not eating.
Extraordinaire de cette situation catastrophique et chaotique que subissent les populations civiles aussi.
It's extremely concerning.
14 millions d'enfants dépendent d'urgence de l'aide humanitaire. Et la situation au nord
More than 14 billion of children are depending on humanitarian aid.
L'ONU avait plaidé pour qu'on permette, n'est-ce pas, l'acheminement de l'aide humanitaire et par notamment le Soudan. Donc la situation est très catastrophique. Et on se rend compte que
had asked for the humanitarian aid to be able to come into Sudan, but so far it hasn't
le ministère
been done.
fédéral de la Santé, donc il y a quelques mois, sont fermés à cause donc, de ces conflits-là. Donc, vous remarquez avec moi et vous serez d'accord avec moi, la situation est d'une telle gravité et qui nécessite vraiment la sensibilisation et comment on appelle, de la communauté internationale et que tout le monde soit au courant de ce qui se passe au Soudan. Alors,
So you'll agree with us that the world population needs to know about what is happening in Sudan.
A été exposé à des violences et à une souffrance sans précédent.
Since last year, the civilian has been exposed to violence. Of course, civilians are the victims. Human rights are violated every day.
Selon un expert donc, du Haut Commissariat des Nations Unies aux droits de l'homme. Des viols massifs. À Al-Jineina,
mass rapes.
Plusieurs douzaines de femmes et de filles ont été violées. N'est-ce pas, dans
Women and girls are raped in the city.
Avec Human Rights Watch, ont raconté leur carrière. Et très récemment, donc, avec la situation.
Of course, survivors are talking to Human Rights Watch about what happened.
On a des cibles, n'est-ce pas, indistinctes, c'est-à-dire on attaque indistinctement les civils et les parties au conflit. Donc, ce qu'on appelle des attaques souvent sans distinction, en pleine violation
and of course, attacks are
du droit international humanitaire.
Targeting civilian and not only military targets. So this is why this is so terrible.
Et des droits de l'homme par certains acteurs. Des attaques sans discernement. La situation catastrophique des réfugiés. En réalité, les réfugiés qui se trouvent donc dans les pays voisins, comme au Tchad.
So now there is many refugees like in Chad, and their situation is terrible.
La dignité et le droit à la vie du peuple soudanais sont jetés aux poubelles. Il y a également donc des conséquences économiques d'une telle envergure, telles que
there is also economical consequences.
L'économie soudanaise, dont la croissance a subi une contraction historique en 2023, rappelant celle de 2011, c'est-à-dire suite à la cession du Soudan du Sud, qui avait causé la perte de près de 75% donc de sa capacité de production pétrolière. Le pillage et dégradation des infrastructures engendrées par le conflit ont fortement touché le secteur industriel. Bien que l'extraction donc se soit largement poursuivie, les installations de traitement ont été endommagées, par exemple expliquant la chute drastique de la production d'or à 2 tonnes métriques fin 2023 contre 35 tonnes métriques fin 2022. Il en va de même pour les secteurs des services et de l'agriculture qui ont également essuyé de larges pertes, conséquences des dommages subis, n'est-ce pas, par les entrepôts et les infrastructures de transformation d'une part et des manques d'accès au marché, aux intrants et au financement d'autre part, selon les données donc, des éco-études économiques. Donc, les conséquences analysées, il faut voir quelles sont les initiatives des pairs qui ont été déclenchées donc, de part et d'autre pour parvenir à une paix durable au Soudan. Donc, ces initiatives peuvent être classées de deux ordres. Il y a des initiatives internationales et des initiatives donc, régionales. En ce qui concerne les initiatives internationales, nous avons en mai 2023 le processus de Jeddah en Arabie Saoudite sous l'égide de Riyad et de Washington. En avril 2024, nous avons une conférence humanitaire internationale pour le Soudan et les pays voisins.
So there have been many peace initiatives internationally and regionally. Sorry for the interruption. As you can see on the slides, there have been many attempts, but nothing so far has been successful.
De l'autorité intergouvernementale pour le développement, IGAD. Janvier 2024, mise en place du panel de haut niveau pour le Soudan par la Commission de l'Union africaine. Juillet 2024, conférence pour la paix au Soudan, au Caire, en Égypte.
Very recently, in July 2024, there were a peace conference in Cairo, Egypt, but still, it was not successful.
Sur le Soudan, conférence à partir de laquelle les États-Unis d'Amérique ont annoncé qu'ils vont acheminer plus de 424 millions de dollars en aide humanitaire pour la crise soudanaise. Mais il faut dire, quelles sont les
Even the United States said that they would send money to help with the crisis. But this is not enough. The peace process fails again and again. First, because two sides are not represented properly.
Avait boycotté, n'est-ce pas, de participer à ces assises-là parce qu'ils reprochent, n'est-ce pas, une certaine
Both generals said their people not to go and not be part of the peace process.
Le non-respect donc des engagements pris.
Even if when they come to an agreement, they don't respect it.
De Genève, il y a eu, n'est-ce pas, des pourparlers qui, en quelque sorte, ont permis la production d'un sorte de cessez-le-feu, mais si le cessez-le-feu n'a pas été respecté par les partis.
They even talk sometimes about ceasefire, and everybody agrees on that, but it's one more time not respected. So in the end, there is never an actual peace agreement between the two sides.
Ce sont les pays en réalité extra-régionales, ce sont les puissances étrangères qui fournissent des aides militaires, donc de l'armament et des soutiens.
But what it's interesting is that it's foreign powers that brings weapons. So this is why the war goes on.
Il est très bizarre de voir qu'un pays comme les Émirats arabes unis ou encore le Tchad plaider pour une paix au Soudan, et en même temps.
So on one hand, they are part of the peace process, and on the other hand, they support the belligerent. So it just can't work.
Donc il y a une certaine hypocrisie de ces puissances étrangères dans la gestion de du conflit soudanais. Donc ils plaident sur la scène internationale.
So it's a lot of talking, but nothing is really sincere.
La guerre continue et il y a des massacres, il y a des violations de droits de l'homme sur les populations civiles et la situation humanitaire se dégrade de plus en plus. Alors, que doit-on faire pour ces pays-là qui est déchiré depuis avril 2023, voire même plus,
what are the solutions?
Par cette crise-là. Déchiré, n'est-ce pas, par cette crise-là. Alors, plusieurs solutions peuvent s'offrir. Hein. La première des choses.
So now we're talking about solution. First, it has to be a priority, like other crises which are occurring at the moment on the international scene.
Si certaines crises sont prioritaires face à d'autres crises.
It seems that some other crises are more priorities.
Parle au niveau de l'Assemblée générale des Nations Unies d'une certaine
So one more time, people are talking about it, but they don't take action about Sudan.
Qui, en réalité, prédomine. C'est pourquoi il faut faire de la crise soudanaise une priorité sur la scène internationale, au même titre que les autres crises, que ce soit ce qui se passe.
So the war in Sudan first has to be a priority. The world has to look at the Sudan and make it a priority.
Ce qui se passe au niveau de l'Ukraine, etc.
We hear a lot about Lebanon, Gaza, Ukraine, but not so much about Sudan.
Donc il faut faire de ces crises
a life is a life. All life matters.
Donc la médiation internationale
also international mediation and also at the regional level has to be has to reach a comprehensive peace agreement.
Donc, s'il n'y a pas d'acteur neutre, le problème pourrait s'aggraver.
Neutrality is very important here because so far people who are part of the peace agreement are taking side. So of course it can't work.
Notamment ce qui se passe aujourd'hui au Darfour est d'une telle gravité que cela doit interpeller la conscience humaine. Cela doit interpeller la conscience humaine, la conscience de la communauté ou de cette fameuse communauté internationale, s'il y en a, pour, n'est-ce pas, faire des actions allant dans le sens d'alléger la souffrance des populations.
the so-called international community has to react about, for instance, what is happening in Darfur.
Il faut qu'il y ait un accord global de paix sous l'égide des acteurs acceptés par les parties au conflit. Parce qu'effectivement,
so the peace agreement should be global.
Encore aggrave la situation, c'est le soutien, comme je l'ai dit, c'est le soutien de certains pays.
Because the situation is made worse because these foreign powers are supporting each side. So it never ends.
Et accepté par tous les acteurs concernés par le conflit. Et il faut mobiliser des ressources.
It should be the first thing to be neutral when they enter the peace process.
Mais également des ressources en soutien humanitaire. Parce que depuis, on annonce des soutiens.
In the meantime, the humanitarian aid should be a reality. Because during all this peace process, the population are still targeted.
En marge de l'Assemblée générale des Nations Unies, les États-Unis ont annoncé en termes d'aide humanitaire.
Very recently, United States of America announced a huge aid. We hope it will come. It's not guaranteed.
Un peu la souffrance donc de ces États-là. Et l'autre chose également, c'est les Soudanais qui se retrouvent en dehors de leur pays. Parce que les réfugiés soudanais,
and of course, there is the refugees
vivent des situations catastrophiques en réalité.
Who are outside of the country and in terrible, terrible, terrible conditions.
Ces Soudanais réfugiés vivent un calvaire extraordinaire. Donc, il faut également mobiliser la communauté internationale pour alléger la souffrance donc, des populations qui se trouvent en dehors de leur pays et permettre, n'est-ce pas, un accord et puis le retour des Soudanais dans leur propre pays. Donc, en conclusion, la guerre au Soudan, c'est une sorte de
these
guerre
people should be able to come back home at some point.
Beaucoup des États n'en font pas mention aujourd'hui. Et ça, c'est assez dommage parce que le Soudan est
Most of countries don't even talk about the war in Sudan. Not about the humanitarian crisis, not about the war itself.
Cela est d'autant plus inquiétant. Les populations civiles vivent des calvaires extraordinaires et qu'il faut alléger dans l'impératif, alléger leurs souffrances,
So civilians are suffering a lot. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much to Wadugo for this presentation. And thank you, Marion, for stepping in and supporting us with having the interpretation in English. So now we are going to welcome Zaira. Zaira is from Sudan, though she doesn't live in Sudan right now. She's an influencer, activist, and international relations graduate. So she's going to share with us some lived experience of the situation in Sudan. So Zaira, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you very well. Can you hear me?
Yes, very well.
Okay. Hello everyone. My name is Umnia Mustafa. I go by the name Zaira on social media. I'm a 21 years old Sudanese activist, and I graduated from the Faculty of International Relations and Diplomatic Studies. It has always been my passion to work in the field of diplomacy and peace campaigns and initiatives. As you know, growing up in Africa as a young adult just made me very interested in those things, as you could see, like injustice unfolding all over the continent. It all started on, I personally right now, I don't have a presentation for you. I just have my lived experience and my story. It all started on April 15th, 2023. We woke up to the sounds of airstrikes and bombs, and we had no idea what's going on despite the news beforehand were talking about raising tensions between the RSF Rapid Support Militia and the Sudanese Armed Forces. It was like I cannot describe how it felt at that moment, but we all had a sense of false hope that this will take a week or two and it will cease. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case. The intensity of the fighting have increased on daily basis. I lived in a neighborhood where I'm surrounded by many military bases, so the shells and missiles all fell in my neighborhood due to errors because we literally live in the middle between multiple RSF and SAF military bases. So after a week or so, we had to leave Khartoum, the capital city of Sudan, which is my home, where I have been born and raised my whole entire life. We went to a nearby city, and although it has just been a single week, we could already see the effects of the war in the Sudanese streets. We could see cars, abandoned cars, flipped over on the street. We could see bodies of people, charred bodies of people. We can smell the foul smell of decomposing bodies. And it all happened too soon. It all happened too soon. And we passed by a destroyed military base. Like, honestly, the scene truly felt straight out of a movie. Like, it's something that your mind just can't comprehend, seeing like burnt tanks and military vehicles and seeing dead soldiers all over the place and their bodies charred and in bits, basically. So it definitely was the first time I came close with the scenery of the war and the horrors of it. And we were stopped by the RSF checkpoint. And literally 10 minutes after we left this checkpoint, the army started attacking the checkpoint. And so the RSF soldiers, they held the other travelers were fleeing, they held them hostage and used them as human shields. So it really is brain altering to think that if me and my family were just 10 minutes late than we should have been, I don't think I would be here telling this story. And that was my first experience coming face to face with death. We went to a city nearby in a state called Jazeera, which is the second biggest state in Sudan and the closest to Khartoum. My father's family come from there, so we were able to stay with family. And the first few weeks were horrible because the city was not made to hold this many people, and almost everyone in Khartoum fled to Jazeera because it was the closest state. So we didn't have water for days. We didn't have electricity. We didn't have anything at all. Like, and all the markets were emptied due to the huge influx of people. And overall, we've lived really uncomfortable weeks. But all of us were relieved because at least we're safe, at least we're alive and in one piece. And then we settled in with Medini and we started to feel a little bit a sense of normalcy, after we lost everything. We lost our home and our city, and we knew that there's no way we could go back. Like every day we see the news, we see more destruction, more horrors, and we just had that dreadful feeling of knowing that home is gone, You can never go back. So we have to move forward. We have to do better for our families. So we settled in with Medini. We found jobs. We started to get used to life again, like falling into a routine. Only for it all to be blown away in a matter of days on December 15th. We started to hear, like before December 15th, we started to hear sounds of bombs again, shellings. Like we just woke up to the same dreadful feeling of the April 15th, the 15th of April, 2023. And we again foolishly held into false hope, thinking that the army was going to repel this attack, and we didn't leave, although every day I go out, I see like mass movement of people leaving the city. Like they didn't even wait for the RSF to enter because everyone now knows what happens when the RSF sees a place. Like they know the horrors that take place. So people started to leave immediately to other states. But we stayed thinking that this attack could be repelled. Only it wasn't. Only Medini, the second biggest city in Sudan, which held 3 million internally displaced people, fell in a matter of a single day once again. The morning we left with Medini is something I just like. When you go into the street, you see a lot of people just walking, like people carrying little babies, people carrying their elderly parents, their grandfathers, their grandmothers, the sick patients being carried in like trolley cars because there is no cars because the second the RSF entered Madani, they looted every single car. So now public transportation doesn't work. People are not able to move in cars, so people are just walking on foot in massive, massive numbers, like thousands of people on the street, looking very hopeless, looking very, like the look in their face, it's just so heartbreaking. Like seeing that they have been betrayed again, seeing that they have to flee again, not knowing where to go this time or what to do this time. Like I said, you see people carrying babies, carrying elderly people, patients, people with IV drips, kidney dialysis patients, cancer patients, just everyone in the street leaving the city. Because honestly, dying on the road or going into the unknown is a much better fate for many people than living a single day under the RSF control. However, me and my family were able to flee to a village nearby in the same state, the Jazeera state. And we thought that we didn't honestly we didn't think they would come there because mostly we know that when the RSF sees a city or a state, they go to rob banks, um, like valuable stuff. So we never expected that they would go into a village because it's a village, nothing there to be looted. But that wasn't the case. 3 days in the village, and we wake up to the sound of gunshots once again. And we wake up and we look into the street. People are running, people are hiding, people are screaming. We see RSF vehicles coming towards us. They start talking to the people. They tell them, we're not here to hurt you. We just want every single vehicle. And then they start looting the vehicles once again, leaving the village and the nearby villages and almost every city without any form of transportation. They also went into every single market. They looted the markets, they looted the pharmacies, they looted the hospitals, and they left. And then they started to come. I stayed in the village for a month and a half, and we encountered them almost every single day. And we weren't able to leave because there was no form of any transportation, and there was no food, and there was no medications. Like every single day, we held a funeral for someone. We held funeral, first of all, the kidney dialysis patients, all of them passed away. And then people with cancer started to pass away. And then people with, chronic diseases like diabetes and hypertension, a lot of them started to have strokes. Like, I'm not even joking, but almost every single day there would be 5 to 6 funerals in the village. Like every single day, our routine is we wake up, we hear screaming, we go to the place where people are screaming, we learn that someone passed away to whatever reason. So it was just like honestly, there is no words in any language or any dictionary could describe the horrors that we've experienced, but I'm trying to summarize it in a way that could convey the feelings to you. After we stayed for a month and a half, my parents, they both have chronic diseases. They both have diabetes and hypertension. We knew that we cannot stay for any long. We have to leave now, or else they also are going to face medical complications. So we walked for like 8 hours to a nearby city. And from there, we were able to take a bus. We were headed north because honestly, at that point, after Medani fell, almost all of central and southern and western Sudan have become really unsafe. So now people just head either east or north Sudan. Like everywhere else is unsafe. We took a bus to a city called Kesela, and the trip usually takes 3 hours. I mean 7 hours from Jazeera to Kassala State. It took us 2 days because we had to go through routes and roads that are not military targets and roads that don't have RSF checkpoints. We had to go through the with alternate roads, basically going into deserts and really dangerous routes, and we had to sleep for 2 days. Like we had to sleep for 2 nights in the desert, basically. We go to Kesela, we're supposed to stay for one day. As soon as we get there, I catch dengue fever. We have to stay for 2 weeks. At that time, Sudan has been plagued with many epidemics and pandemics like malaria, typhoid, dengue fever, waterborne diseases, a lot of things. And the healthcare system has collapsed in all of the country. Like even in safer states, we like in Madani, before we had to be displaced for the second time, I lost three relatives due to the lack of medical assistance. My father himself was very sick and we took him to the hospital. There was no electricity. We were holding the flashlight for the doctors so they could put in the IV drips and, revive him. And that was the case for all over Sudan. My uncle needed oxygen tank. I don't know what it's called, the oxygen thing. There was a single factory working in Sudan and it wasn't working at that time because of the war, and patients almost in ICUs everywhere died. Like it did like as I'm talking to you, I keep remembering more and more horrific statistics, more horrific incidents that I just can't recall all of it at the same time. Like every time another thing comes to my brain and every one is more horrific than the ones before. So I'll just go back to what I was saying about going to Kesela, catching dengue fever, going to the hospital, not finding anything, not even like painkillers. We literally had to like overcome dengue fever on our own. No painkillers, nothing, and it was really, really painful. Stay in Kesela for 2 weeks, then we head to Atbara, which is a city in North Sudan. And then we stayed there for a long time. And as we were there, recovering slowly from the traumas that have occurred and the traumas that we've experienced, we hear of a drone attack. Like you start to get. I think what I like the most about human nature is the ability to adapt. Like a lot of times you go through something, you're like, I'm never going to get over this. I'm never going to accept this. But with time, you find yourself really just, like accepting it and living normally as if nothing happened. And that was the case for us. Like every 2 months after we get displaced, we start to get used to life again, like how it was, life without bombardment, and then something happens that takes us back to that point, to point zero. So when we were in Atbara, a really huge drone attack happened. Like I was outside looking, like searching for something, and then I see a drone literally flying over me. And then we hear the explosion, and then we learn that 50 people died in like a social gathering. And then we are panicking once again, like, where do we go now? Like, we don't have money, we don't have assistance, nothing. And by the way, throughout my journey of displacement, which is like 5 times or 4 times, we didn't receive any kind of assistance from any international organization. We received nothing. Absolutely nothing. And we hear of stories of Sudanese people crossing to countries like Ethiopia, Eritrea. We hear stories of people getting shot at the borders. We hear stories of people getting caught and getting deported back with zero respect for the international law and the refugees protection law. So we're just like stuck. We're like, what do we do now? Like, we have no money. Nowhere is safe. We don't feel safe. Everything is running out. Like, and then we check the news, we see not even a single article about Sudan, whether on international news, African news, Arab news, Middle Eastern news, nothing. Nothing. Like, I think last January there was a huge telecommunication blackout in Sudan. Like, every company went out of service for like 3 weeks. And my only source of news was following activists on social media, like Sudanese activists on social media, until I became one myself because I knew that I had to step in. No one is doing anything. There's no international agencies reporting on this, and we need to get our voice out there. We need to help our people. So picked up the rule myself and I started posting about it, despite it putting me in immense danger. I started to receive a lot of threats from the RSF militia. I started to receive threats like, oh, we're gonna find you, we're gonna rape you, we're gonna kill you, shut up, don't talk, stop, we're gonna make you lose your accounts, we're gonna. But I knew that they do this to everyone, and this is why everyone is silent. But if we all are silent, then we're not going to get any voice out there, and we're going to remain in this hole forever, just echoing each other's voices, echoing each other's screams with no one receiving them. So I have to do it despite the danger it brings. I mean, my content is already out there, right? Like, what's the worst that can. So during the telecommunication blackout, I started to watch the TV for the first time, although like I gave up. Like, I knew that there is no news in Sudan. But I was thinking, okay, now I cannot see on my phone. Like, I have to do something. Like, it's driving me crazy. I need to know what's going on out there. I turn on the TV and I see nothing. I turn on every single news channel. I turn on international news channels. I turn on Arab news channels. I turn on everything and I find nothing about Sudan. And honestly, that fueled me with so much hatred to the world. Like, why is our suffering so normalized? Why is African suffering so overlooked? Why are we so dehumanized? Why is it always, just a bunch of Africans killing each other again in Africa? Like, it's just a normal day, like, why? So I started to pick up the rule more of talking and speaking and doing, the best I can. And it's not because I expect anything. To be honest, at this point, I don't expect anything from the world. I don't even want anything from the world. I just want people to bear witness. I want people to bear witness. And I don't want to give people a chance to come after 10 years and be like, oh, we had no idea. Because they did have an idea. And Sudan is not a forgotten word. Because we are talking. We are speaking. We're here. And we're talking. It's intentionally overlooked, intentionally underreported. So this is why we do what we do. This is why we put ourselves in risk. And we just need people to bear witness, and we don't want excuses when Sudan becomes, and it actually is right now, the worst humanitarian crisis on earth, with more than 150,000 casualties, 11 million displaced people, and 2.5 million people are expected to die by the end of this year due to the famine ongoing in Sudan. Sudan has the worst famine in the world in 40 years. Sudan is the biggest and worst humanitarian crisis in the world right now. And that's all I have to say. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Zera. And thank you, Mariam, for the interpretation. If you have questions, the audience, you are free to ask your question in the chat box.
Okay, I see a question over there. The first one is, what countries are sending weapons to the army that is forcing you to relocate frequently? So the answer to this question, I wouldn't say the army is the one that's relocating me frequently. I would say it's the rapid support forces that's causing this amount of displacement, because every time they enter a new state or city, people start to leave because they have been really horrible to people, very barbaric and basically demonic. So this is why people are leaving. And the countries that are supporting the RSF, one I could confidently name right now is the United Arab of Emirates. They are actively supporting the Rapid Support Militia. You could there is a there is a report that has been submitted by the Sudan's delegation in the Security Council. It has detailed informations of how the UAE is funding the militia. They basically have a base in Chad that keep on providing weaponry to the RSF. They airlift their soldiers and give them medical attention in the UAE and so many things. Like I think if you look up, or I will try to find it and maybe put it. If you look up the Sudanese delegation report in the Security Council, you would find like a detailed analysis and report of how the UAE is funding the RSF. And for the army, a lot people say Iran and China and all these things, but honestly, we're not really seeing anything on ground, at least not substantial evidence like the UAE has.
Another question. Are groups like yes, are group like World Central Kitchen and Médecins Sans Frontières able to enter Darfur area?
Honestly, I would say the situation in Darfur is much more complex, as the war in Darfur, the genocide in Darfur extends back to 20 years ago or 21 years ago. It's considered the first genocide of the 21st century. The roads, there's like different other militias that have presence in Darfur. Khartoum Central Kitchen, I'm pretty sure it only works in Khartoum, and they're trying to expand to other safe states because people are starving in IDP camps. And yeah, I don't think aid reaches the people in Darfur. I think the army have been airdropping medicine and food to Al Fashir, but I'm unsure if it's for people or for troops over there. But yeah, like the situation in Darfur is much, much worse, and the famine is manufactured over there, like explicitly to starve the population in Darfur.
Thank you. There is another question. The chat. Do you have views on how this civil war can end? What needs to be done in your view?
What needs to be done in my view, I'm trying to be as neutral as possible, but I think it really is not that possible because as a Sudanese citizen myself, I was literally fleeing from RSF controlled areas to army controlled areas. So I think what needs to be done is strong uh condemnation of the RSF and the UAE's interference in Sudan. It needs to be sanctioned. The RSF needs to be considered as a terrorist organization. They need to pressure both sides for long ceasefire deals. And the most important thing is to facilitate safe passages for people to leave and to facilitate humanitarian aid for people in IDP camps and refugee camps. And also they need to, I think the because right now who's occupying my house is the RSF. They are the ones occupying my house. They are the ones occupying our places. They are the ones committing mass rapes. They are the ones committing social violence, sexual violence. So I think the criticism and the condemnation and the sanctions should mostly go to the RSF and to pressure the UAE to get its hands off the Sudan. Like a lot of Sudanese politicians, like political scientists and analysts, say that this war could have ended a long time ago if it wasn't for the continuous support of the UAE for the RSF support, for the RSF militia. So that's how I see it ending by, in bullet points, condemning the RSF and the UAE and sanctioning them both, and then like pressuring both sides for long-term ceasefire deals that involve getting out of civilian homes and civilian cities, and lastly, facilitating humanitarian aid and safe passages for people.
Yes, as you are talking of UAE, there is another question in this regard. I will raise this before coming back to the others. Why is UAE supporting the RSF?
Okay, so the UAE is supporting the RSF for many, many reasons, but mostly it's like imperialist gains and neocolonialism. Like the UAE really wants Port Sudan. It wants the Red Sea coast, which is a very strategic place, you know. And they also the gold. I think the main reason is the gold in Sudan. Sudan is one of the richest countries in the world when it comes to gold, and despite the war that's going on right now, the flow of gold exports to the UAE is very stable, and the smuggling as well. So a lot of people think that the UAE has intended for the RSF to topple the army and take control of the country, like in a more like this war to a lot of Sudanese people is considered like a failed coup, you know. Like it was just supposed to be the RSF taking out the leader of the army, then taking control of the country, but that's not what happened. Like the army retaliated, so now we are in a war. So I think they support the RSF for imperialist gains over Sudan, like the gold and the strategic minerals in Sudan, like uranium and such as like also Port Sudan and the strategic location of Port Sudan.
Yes, okay. Another question. How do you manage, Zaira, to stay strong after all the horrors you lived and witnessed?
Like I said, to be honest, the most uh the the best quality in human nature is adaptation. Like you would be surprised. Like I think a lot of people would be like, "Oh, that's such a horrible situation. I can't imagine experiencing it." But when you actually do, you will push through because that's what human nature is like. This is how humanity have survived a lot of things, you know, up until this point. Uh, so yeah, it's just a sense of strength and resilience that you can also drive from wanting to save your family, from wanting to provide for the people you love, from, you know, finding a purpose and a message. Those things what personally keep me grounded is providing for my family, staying strong for my family, doing my best for my family, and uplifting Sudan and amplifying Sudanese voices. I found these things as my true purpose in life, and this is why I have to keep pushing and keep going.
Yes. Yes. Another question. In the USA, what do you think people from USA should do to encourage their leaders?
Okay. I think because we all know that the relationship between the UAE and the USA is very strong. They have a strong alliance, and so I think the American people could pressure the government to cut ties with the UAE, especially when it comes to military support and financial support. And basically, the most they could do is pressure the government to condemn the UAE, cut military assistance from the UAE, address their support for the RSF militia, sanction the RSF militia and the countries that are aiding it. But honestly, I think we're pushing it because at the end of the day, the UAE is a pawn, you know. I don't think it moves independently from the from the USA's interests in the Middle East in general. So that's like that's what I think that should happen, but I'm not really hopeful. Like the USA would sabotage its relationship with the UAE.
Yes, the other question in the same line, not more broadly, also what the diplomatic and international movement can do to make clear our full support for a peace solution for the Sudanese people?
I think diplomatically, like I said, would be strongly condemning the UAE, addressing, like the elephants in the room, the cause of the issue in Sudan, because a lot of people just like to throw Sudan under the umbrella of another African conflict held by African people, like slaughtering African people, so it's not our problem. Like a lot of people like to brush their hands of the conflicts in Africa, although if we trace most of them, we would find that they go back to colonialism era, neo-colonialism and imperialism and proxy wars and yada yada yada. So I would say the best thing to do is to like raise awareness and specify the causes behind the war. Like I think people work harder when they feel a sense of responsibility, when they feel like, I'm not saying guilt, but I'm just saying like responsibility in general. Like people should boycott the UAE. People should be shunned for vacationing in Dubai. Like I know I'm being a little bit radical, but that's what I think could like is a true help to the cause. And in general, international movement, I think the best they can do is just boost the humanitarian campaigns, boost the relief organizations, because there is no aid in Sudan. There's nothing like going on there. Like most of the aid groups and everything, besides like I would say Doctors Without Borders and the Honor NRC, most of the initiatives are ground initiatives, are local initiatives. So I think people should be able to boost them out, and also sponsoring refugee campaigns. Like a lot of countries, like in the West, when the Ukrainian war happened, for example, they've hosted a lot of Ukrainian refugees. They've hosted a lot of like, they had a lot of programs, to help those people, but we don't see the same being done to any other nation that's not in Europe or in the West. So I think like there's this heartbreaking story of this Sudanese Canadian man who's been trying to bring his sister from Sudan to Canada after the war, and he's been protesting, like doing a one-man protest for like a whole year. And every time he submits his application, it gets rejected. So I think the international movements and diplomatic could do their best to help the populations, the people, the vulnerable people, the refugees, and amplify their rights. Because, like I said, a lot of refugees are getting deported, although that's against the international law. It's against the international humanitarian law. It's against everything. So why are these people getting deported? Why are people not accepted out there? Like, there needs to be a lot of emphasis and accountability and a lot of condemnation, to be honest.
Thank you. Charlotte from Togo comments you, Zera, for your engagement and activism.
Thank
Yes,
you.
and asks a question about if you know any other civil society organization that is involved in your struggle for us to collaborate.
I know like Khartoum Central Kitchen. It's an initiative to feed the people in war zones. I know the Sudan Solidarity Fund. I know Kendaka Magazine. Um, and there is a lot of individual activists as well on social media who are doing immense work and job to amplify the Sudanese cause.
Okay. You mentioned a report, Fatoumata. Would like to know if you can share the link of this report. Okay. And then another from Julie. It says, I'm horrified by your experience. Thank you for telling us about this horrible situation. Please take care of yourself. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
if I could just interrupt, because I just wanted to say, Thank you so much for sharing your personal story. I can see in the comments many people are very, very moved by your words. And I'm the organizing director of World Beyond War, and I've kind of been behind the scenes supporting the tech today. But I wanted to just unmute myself and say that on behalf of World Beyond War, we really appreciate you sharing this. And this is sort of a small webinar today, but hearing all of this, I think many of us on this call are compelled to want to make this an international campaign that we at World Beyond War can take on. The World Beyond War network has over 40 chapters around the world, and we also have over 100 affiliate organizations. So I think that this webinar today can be a spark for all of us at World Beyond War to share this with all of our chapters and all of our affiliates. And really, I hope that this can be a call to action for us to work with you and to develop materials, whether that's petitions, letter writing campaigns, social media toolkits, whatever form that can take, so that we can really utilize, because we do have a global network of tens of thousands of people. And so I really want to kind of use this as a spark and to really support you in this work. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Greta.
Thank you, Greta. Okay, yes, I'm going to take some more questions in the chat. What is the view of most Sudanese about this war?
Okay. Okay. To be honest, I want to like portray this as authentically and transparent as I can. Like, I don't want to sound like I'm being biased or supporting any part of this war, but I would say the general sentiment of the Sudanese people is that they all are against the RSF. Like, because what they've done to us is not enough. Like, they've looted our house, they've raped our daughters, they've done so many things. So the general sentiment is that most of Sudanese people do not accept negotiations. They do not want to coexist with this militia. They don't feel safe, they don't feel comfortable. Like, all of them, they want to repel the RSF from Sudan and the UAE's presence as well. I wouldn't say a lot of people are in the support of the army because it's like we lived under a dictatorship for 30 years ruled by the army, and that's what sparked the 2018 December uprising, is that people were sick of military dictatorship. They wanted democracy, they wanted civilian governance. So not a lot of people are happy with the army because of the way it treated the young protesters during the revolution. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the 3rd of June massacre that took place in front of the military headquarters in 2019, and also the endless genocides and massacres that have been taking place in Darfur and West Sudan, and the civil war in South Sudan. So a lot of people are not really happy with the army, but most of people, I can positively say that most of people they feel compelled to support the army, as they see it as the only solution against this militia, against this invading fascist militia that's plundering its way in Sudan. And it's crazy to witness, because even the rebel groups that have been fighting against the army in West Sudan have joined hands with the army right now to fight off this militia. Like, that's how horrible it is. Like, it started unconsciously uniting the Sudanese people, which is something we struggled with for a long, long time.
There is another question. It's in French. I'm trying to summarize it in English. The question from Mubarak about the silence of the international community regarding Sudan. So Mubarak thinks the world powers are much more preoccupied by the situation in Ukraine. And yes, what we see, the situation in Sudan is happening on our eyes, we can all see. So how do you, let me see. Okay.
Take your time.
Yes, so please, how do you see this silence from the international community, who is either interested by the other conflict?
To be honest, I really want to keep the peace and not sound radical, but I feel really bitter about this specific question, like this specific situation. Like, feeling so insignificant, you know, to the point where not even a single news is reported about our death and demise and misery is something that's like it fills me with so much hatred, and that's something that I've been trying to not do, is to not lose myself to hatred and anger. Like I still want to be a pro peace person. I still want to be pro unity, but like seeing the world's reaction to different conflicts and to how it reacts when it's in Africa is definitely very repulsive to me. Like it genuinely fills me with so much hatred. And I mean, we don't really have to, you know, sugarcoat things. What's happening is because the world is biased, the world is racist, the world is anti-black, the world, you know, prefers to look at people they deem as more civilized and more worthy of saving than just, you know, those lowly Africans, right? Like all they do is just kill each other. So why do we even try? So that's the thing. I mean, during the Ukrainian war, when I was watching the news very extensively because I have Russian friends and Ukrainian friends, and I was really concerned. And I'm like an IR major, so and in general, I have to see the news. I would see reporters saying, those are not children in the Middle East. Those are not children in Africa. Those are children with blue eyes and blonde hair. Like, yeah, what's happening is horrible. No one, not a single person in the world deserves to experience this. But when the people put it like this, it's like they think that some people are more worthy of saving than other people. Some people are more humanized in the eyes of the world than other people. And it's very dreadful, to be honest, to think about it. But yeah, like to put it simple and short, the world is just really, really racist and anti-black.
Yeah. I'll take another question from Fatumata, who asks if UN is using military approach to solve the war.
UN?
Yes, UN.
So far, no. Like, I think I'm not really sure, but I read some news that they want to send peacekeeping campaigns to Sudan, and most of the Sudanese people are like, no, we don't want further, you know, international interference. So a lot of people were against it, but I'm not sure if they will like proceed with it. But so far, no, there isn't.
Yeah. Yes, I want to remind that Wadugu can step in to answer any of the questions if he wants to.
Merci beaucoup Mariam, merci beaucoup Guy. Par rapport aux questions qui ont été posées, bon, pour la plupart, je suis d'avis avec Zera, surtout en ce qui concerne.
So for most of the question, Wadugu says he agrees with Zera.
La nuance qu'il faut faire, il n'y a pas de base militaire.
He wants to bring the nuance that there is no military base in Chad. There is kind of a corridor. They go through with the weapon from the United Emirates Arab, but there is no military basis per se.
Aux yeux de la communauté internationale, il faut dire en réalité
about the refugees and about the international community, it's hypocrisy.
Qui se déroule en Afrique. Il y a une certaine hypocrisie, bien entendu. Quand la situation en Ukraine,
there is this hypocrisy because it happens in Africa. When it's in Ukraine, everybody talks about it. There is money, there is aid, you have to welcome the refugees. But when it's in Africa and specifically in Sudan, it's not important.
Qu'on accorde à ces conflits-là. Raison pour laquelle la communauté internationale est hypocrite à ce niveau.
That's why the international community is so much hypocrite. And it's not even a community.
Il y a une question qui dit que quel est l'intérêt donc du Tchad de servir de couloir pour les forces d'intervention
rapide. There is a question saying why the Chad is helping the rapid support force. So what is happening is that the Emirates are paying the Chad so they can go through the country to deliver the weapon. There have been a lot of bribery. Chad government received a lot of bribery just to let the weapons go through.
Ce qu'il faut faire, comme je l'ai dit tantôt, il faut que la guerre au Soudan soit une priorité, au même titre que les autres guerres.
The war in Sudan has to be a priority, exactly like any other war in the world.
Permettre l'acheminement de l'aide humanitaire qui a été à un moment donné bloqué.
The aid has to come in. It has been blocked.
La situation au Darfour aujourd'hui, elle est très catastrophique. Des morts, des viols, des enfants qui sont, voilà, subissent des faim, des maladies,
death,
des agressions sexuelles, tout ça,
disease, sexual violence.
Acheminer l'aide humanitaire et
the aid has to go through,
les réfugiés qui se trouvent dans les pays frontaliers, le Tchad,
and refugees has to be treated properly.
Les réfugiés qui se trouvent au Tchad, notamment dans l'Est, vivent des
refugees in Chad
en réalité.
Are living in dreadful conditions.
À fournir un peu de l'aide de part et d'autre, mais c'est insuffisant.
There is a little bit of aid, but it's really not enough.
Vivre au Tchad, c'est mieux de partir dans leur pays. On a vu des Soudanais qui voulaient
At
même
some point, Sudanese refugees in Chad say, "We're going to go back to Sudan. It's going to be better that this refugee camp."
Merci beaucoup.
Can I just say one thing I forgot, but he reminded me of right now about the conditions of refugees. I'm not sure if you heard about the situation of the Sudanese refugees who were stranded in a forest in Ethiopia, and eventually they had to walk all the way back to Sudan on foot. There were 6,000 refugees in a camp in Ethiopia, and they kept getting attacked every single day by some Ethiopian armed people. They sought help from the police, from the UNHCR, and then nothing happened. They still getting attacked every single day, and some of them got killed, and their stuff were looted. Eventually, they ventured into a forest to protect themselves, which they were attacked by a snake, and they were attacked by a crocodile. And then we, as Sudanese activists, we started a campaign. We started emailing the UNHCR. Then the UNHCR issued the report where they actually lied about a lot of things. They lied about the condition of the people. They lied about the number of refugees who are stranded. And they lied about them approaching them and them not wanting help when they never actually stepped a foot. So yeah, the situation, the Sudanese refugees, who are already a very vulnerable group of people, are struggling to, like, in ways that are unimaginable, especially now with the floods that are in Chad and displacing Chadian people, and also with like Sudanese refugees. There has to be immediate response from the world to the issues of refugees.
Okay. So let's take some more questions. Yes, that a question from Charles.
Une question de la part de Charles.
Is there a possibility that the two warring parties will be brought to dialogue, having seen no political will and commitment of the two leaders and a conflict with many actors?
There has been many talks. There have been the Jeddah talk, which is hosted by the USA and the Saudi Arabia, the Jeddah Convention, and then there has been the Geneva talks, but the army didn't go because basically they always fail. Because the first thing the army asks for is for the RSF to get out of the houses of the Sudanese people, and then the RSF saying no, and then they're like, okay, we're not negotiating, and then they just leave.
Yes, the question from Prof. Leek, I think we already raised similar question about diplomatic international movement, and we have some suggestion from Jove, Alan. So I will move to another question from Ahmad. It is in French. Let me just say it in English. So knowing that the dynamics of conflicts always revolve around the issues at stake, how can certain states, such as Chad, take advantage of this to take part in these atrocities at a time when large number of refugees are settling in the region, impacting on its economy and stability?
I think the first speaker have answered this question perfectly. He said the government have been bribed with a lot of money to let this not really a base, like I said, it's a corridor or maybe like a field, hospital and like a bunch of camps. The government have been bribed a lot to facilitate this, and also there is another thing about the tribes, like the at the borders of Chad and Darfur. Like I wouldn't say that the RSF is like it is an ethnic militia, but like we don't want to make this an ethnic conflict. We don't want to say like this tribe, all of them are bad, they all are murderers or blah blah blah. But it's definitely supported by certain tribes, and those tribes have like the same tribe is in Sudan and in Chad. So they're helping their cousins basically smuggle weaponry, and they help them with mercenaries, with the fighting force. They keep crossing from Chad and just the Sahel in general, like Niger and stuff. But the RSF have a lot of mercenaries from a lot of places. I personally met a Yemeni mercenary, a Libyan mercenary. I met a Russian mercenary. So yeah, it encompasses a lot of people. But I would say the territorial tribes, being the same tribe, definitely contributes to Chad helping them. And again, the bribes. They got bribed a lot by the USA.
Do you know if South Africa is supporting Sudan or the UAE?
To be honest, I'm not really sure because as far as I know, the leader of the RSF had like a small tour around Africa. He went to Rwanda, he went to Uganda, he went to Chad, he went to and then he met the South African PM, I think. He met the South African government, so I don't know what that insinuates. But in general, there isn't like a clear sign of whether South Africa is backing any side.
How is your personal situation now? Food and medicine, relative peace where you are, ways to generate income?
Okay. So I'm currently in Egypt. I was able to, so I think when I got this place for the second time, some of my friends and some activists have convinced me to start a fund to get my family out of here as we had no source of income, and I did, and it did really well. So I used the fund money to bring my immediate family to Egypt. And my immediate family is my parents and my uncle and his kids, which are like 9 people basically. I brought them to Egypt, and the rest of the money I give it to relatives who are still in Sudan. Um, and then right now I'm searching for jobs, I'm searching for scholarships. We still don't have like like a source of income, but life is going, like life is moving, and it's good. Like it's not bad. Like I'm doing my best and it's working. That's all I have to say. Thank you so much for your concern.
So yeah, yes, I think we can take like two more questions. Sorry if you can read all of them, but we are almost through. Yes, this other question, where are they now with negotiation for a ceasefire?
Like I don't think they're negotiating right now.
No, okay.
The last ones were the Geneva talks and they failed.
Yeah.
So now, thank you very much to all of you who were there for that webinar. What you can do to support to make peace possible. you can sign the
qui a été
petition
initié par notre chapitre du Sénégal.
initiated
Et
by the
comme
chapter.
Greta l'a dit tantôt, WorldBeyond
And like Greta said,
répandre
and WorldBeyondWar is gonna spread the word about that campaign.
Puissent être réunis pour contribuer à notre niveau à
So
mettre
we
fin à cette
can
guerre.
contribute and make
Soudan
peace
et
possible.
soutenir les personnes qui sont encore pris au piège de cette guerre.
And we're going to do what we can to support people who are trapped in this conflict.
Le lien pour la pétition est dans le chat.
The link to the petition is in the chat.
Il nous reste à dire merci à Zeira, dire merci à Ouagadougou pour votre temps.
Thank you very much to Zera. Thank you very much, Ouagadougou. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing the knowledge.
Nous remercions également. Merci beaucoup, Marion. Et nous remercions tout le monde qui a pris part à ce webinaire, qui a eu à la base beaucoup d'intérêt. Le sujet est passionnant. Nous avons eu 203 personnes qui se sont enregistrées pour suivre ce webinaire. Nous avons une quarantaine qui sont présentées. C'est un bon nombre.
200 people had registered for this webinar and 40 people was there today. And so this is really good. And thank you very much. And we're going to share more information about Sudan.
Les personnes qui sont affectées par ce conflit au Soudan. Merci à tout le monde.
Thank you, everybody, very much.